The first question, it seems a dear friend of mine forgot about a small amount of money he owes me. I voluntarily lent it to him. I'm afraid I might lose my friendship if I remind him. What should I do? I use an old Chinese proverb. If you lend a book to someone, you're a fool. If that fool returns you the book, he's also a fool. So if someone is in need and you help him out by lending him money, especially a small amount, and you expect him to remember it, let it grounded in his heart that he remember and repay you, it's not practical. He's not going to repay you. He may forget about it. He may not deliberately want to forget about it, but he just forget about it. Yeah, he just forget about it. So just forget it if it is not that significant. If you feel you're being cheated and if you really want it back, then there's some other ways that you can always remind him. Another way of reminding him is if he comes to the temple and he say, oh, I want to make a donation. Oh, I forgot to bring my money. But I remember last time you borrowed $50 from me, and that's good enough for my blessings, and the blessings can go to you too. So why don't you donate it on my behalf? Donate it on my behalf, and we regard it as a repayment of this monetary. It could be a monetary blessings. So you put it in a nice way, and he has to donate this $50, and that's a dedication. You can do it like that. If you let someone borrow from you, a friend, if it is a small amount, you consider that as a write-off. You don't worry about it. Why do you still want to put it in your heart? It's just about $100 or $200 or $300, and you sleep on it, on your pillow, and you remember it every day, and you spend about, say, a total of 50 hours to think about it. So 50 hours divided by 500, so it's $30 an hour. So you thought $30 hours to hang on something you attach to. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. On the other hand, if you want to lend money to a friend, an amount that is quite significant, you really should sign a contract, a promissory note. Mr. So-and-so, borrow, say, $20,000 because he really need it for a medical bill, for paying medical expenses, and he promised to repay, then you have a contract. You have a contract in your mind. Then if he has a contract, it's not easy to forget. And he may deliberately forget it. Then there's so many ways you can tell him. You can even tell him that I need, right now I know that there's a trip going to Thailand to release buffaloes being auctioned in the slaughterhouses, and I want to help this buffalo out by buying these buffaloes and giving them back to the farmers who sold it, and let the buffaloes live until death, natural death. And I think I need about $20,000. Can you help me out? I remember you borrowed $20,000 from me, and is it possible that you repay me so that I can do these blessings? I can dedicate that to you too. Well, then he would oblige to return it to you, maybe. So there's so many ways. With small amount, just forget about it. Next, please explain the correct viewpoint when a situation arises where someone seems to deliberately deceive you. If someone seems to deceive you, has he been successful in deceiving you? You already have fallen into the trap already? If you haven't, then you be careful not to fall into his trap. Don't get deceived. Just be more careful. If a situation arises where he may deceive you, you try not to be deceived. Why would you allow yourself to be deceived by him or her? If he has already deceived you in many, many ways, for example, a young guy deceived a young girl saying that he's not married and he's going to ask for a date, and if she finally finds out that she has a wife, then don't get associated with that friend anymore. You know. Don't get deceived. Don't get blind if what we call falling in love. There's no such thing. You fall in love with someone who has a wife. What do we call that? If you have that's not good. Particularly if you have a relationship, we call it adultery, which is not right. As I said, in this realm of desire, there's so many desires, and we have been reincarnating into different bodies since many lives, and because we have that sexual desire in us. If you don't have that desire, you won't get reincarnated into this realm, you get in the higher realm. So the animals or sentient beings with sexual desires are used, especially physical sexual desires, they live in a lower realm. The lower realm you are, the more obvious is the sexual desire. The more obvious is the lack of what do you call, adequate, and lack of morality. Imagine animals can do it anywhere they want. Humans cannot. Animals have contact. Humans, when humans are doing that relationship, they also have physical contact, and that's the lowest form of sexual fulfillment, if we call it that way. You know, in those heavens that we talk about in the desire realms, they have different level of sexual fulfillment. In one level, it's not by physical contact, it's a shake of hands. So in other words, if a woman and a man come together and they shake hands, that is a sexual relationship. But in here, the sexual relationship is so coarse and rough that you need a physical contact. But in the higher level, just a shake of hand. In another level, it's just eyesight. In other words, if a man and a woman exchange eyesight, then that relationship was fulfilled. It's getting subtler and subtler when it goes to higher level. So the human level is so coarse and so unsubtle. It's no good. So that's the reason why the Buddha's disciples have to lead a celibate life where they don't have any relationship. And some people will say, oh, poor monks and nuns, these guys, they don't have a relationship. Poor, you know, what's the purpose of their life? They don't have a girlfriend, they don't have a boyfriend. They are really, I think they are very bored. They're no good. You don't know. You are the guys who are fooled by phenomena. They are the guys who are at a saintly level that you don't even know of. You think you're great. You think that living in a prison is good. You've been so used to the prison wall. You've been so used to your own egoistic prison wall. You're locked up. That's your comfort zone. This is my comfort zone. I'm greedy. I have this relationship. I have a boyfriend. I have a girlfriend. I have a mansion. I have a yacht. I have all kinds of luxuries. I have this comfort zone. That comfort zone is actually to the wisdom eyes that is suffering. You don't even know about it. Yes? You raise your hand?
I have a question. In regards to the exchange of people shaking hands, eye contact, touch, I'll share with you. I touched a gentleman's face here, actually. And my intention was not from a sexual anyway. My intention is compassion and love and concern for that person.
Okay, yes.
So, Venerable, is it not, I'm with a clear heart.
Yeah.
I'm not being polluted.
I see what you mean, but let me explain it to you.
Okay.
I think you have misunderstood what I said.
Okay.
I said in this RAM level, a true sexual relationship is a physical contact. You need physical contact, right? That's number one. In a higher level, in a much subtle level, when they perform that relationship, they don't need a physical. Hands is also physical. Sometimes exchange of eyesight, they already have fulfilled that sexual requirement. As far as in this realm, a hugging, a kissing, I mean, it's so common. It's almost like a courtesy. And also it's much more. There's much more. What I say in the public, for example, it's much more courteous than an obvious relationship. Nobody would perform the sexual relationship in the public anyway. But a hugging and a kissing on on hands and all that is a gesture of warmth. So that's not what we're getting at all. There's no problem with that. The customs required it, and it's customary in North America, but it's not customary in China. So if you see a monk, oh, reverend, and then you hug that reverend, you hug that nun, you're in trouble. You're a man and you saw a nun, and so, oh, a sister, and then you kiss her face and all that, and you get a strike on the face by someone. Because in China, it's not common to hug people. More and more, it's getting a little bit more common because some people are more westernized than the others. So if you see a monk, you see, I've never hugged any of the disciples, any of you. Have you ever seen me hugging any one of you? No, it's not. We don't do that like that. I think monks and nuns should not hug each other, should not hug the layman, or they should not do that because they want to be a celibate life. In the physical contact of hugging, there are certain vital parts of the body that would be in contact, and that would suggest a lot of ideas, Yeah. Of course, you may not have that ideas. Somebody don't have that ideas, but some do. Remember I said many years ago, well, when we meditate, we don't need to mix, we don't need to segregate into two sections. Let the man and the woman just mix together. There are really guys who want to come in and say, which one looks better? Which girl looks better? And then say, oh, this is the girl I'm going to sit next to. And then they sit very close. And then, you know what I mean? So they feel comfortable sitting next to a pretty looking girl than a 75-year-old. Of course. Now I'm not discriminating 75-year-old. But a 75-year-old is certainly as not good looking as a 25-year-old. You agree? I judge it on the facial look. But yeah?
Without physical contact, how do we keep the race going?
So if there's no sexual contact, there's no proliferation. You think proliferation is the main purpose of human beings? So they just produce and produce and produce. That's the purpose of their life. Well, there's more proliferation in the hog's farm, in the cow's farm. If proliferation is the purpose of life, then I think the purpose of life is very meaningless. If we just concentrate on producing and we're making more John and Sonny and we're making more boys and girls, is that the only purpose of life?
Well, if you're brought up in a Christian home,
yeah,
it says in the Bible, go and multiply.
Yeah, but then if you go and multiply with morality is good, but go and multiply without morality, you can get into trouble. Yeah, okay, so and also remember, we live in this plane of existence is life and death. And the Buddhists talk about something that our intelligence has not reached to. This life and death is because of proliferation. So in other words, if we're in the prisons for so long, if we're born in the prisons, we don't know the agony of being in a prison. If I was born as a baby in a prison, then I was born in it and I'm confined in a certain territory. I don't know there's an outside world. It's like when a frog is in a well, and if someone asks that frog, can you see the sky, which is so wide, so beautiful? Of course, the sky is very beautiful. I cannot go out to the sky, but I can see the sky is really better than the place. The frog said, it's better than the place that I'm living in here. And then the God said, do you know how big is the sky? The frog said, yeah, the sky is round, like that. He's looking up to the well and say, that's the sky. But the frog's view is only restricted by the opening of the well. The sky is much, much wider. We think the proliferation, sexual enjoyment is a kind of satisfaction and pleasure, but it's a pain. There's a lot of joy that's far more better than this. There's a lot of joy that's more spiritual. The spiritual joy is far better than this material contact joy. And also, this material contact joy has driven a lot of people to crimes, to mistakes. Oh, I still remember 2 years ago, I was in Hong Kong in a lecture hall, and there was a young man coming up to me, about 30 years old. And when he came up to me, I observed his face and his head. His head was like swollen. Like an ordinary head is like this, but the head is like swollen. You can see the head was swollen, and somehow things to be like blowing up with his head. And then he asked me, Reverend, without mentioning his name, is okay. He said, I have something to confess. I don't know what to do. He had a sickness, venereal disease, and that disease is swelling of the head. And he feels so much suffering, because when he was young, since he was 23, 24, and now he's 30 something, for the past 10 years, he had relationship almost like at least a few times every week with different people. Whether it's through many ways. And he was he felt that he was a playboy. He was so good. Everybody was around, and he looks good, and he had all kinds of girlfriends. But he squandered his life away. And he said, what should I do now? It could be incurable. So stay away from that. If you can stay away from that, you already have a saint in this world. So in other words, why does a monk or nun become so respectable? Because he's celibate. Because he could be able to get away with that, which you cannot. You're still attached to it. You still think that it's good. All right, I've got too much time in answering. Did I answer that question? So make sure that you don't get deceived. Final question. Can you explain causality and emptiness? So how do we explain it? It's not that difficult to explain if we do it generally. Causality, 缘起, means that everything in this universe is based on cause and effect. Every effect has its cause or causes. For example, if this is a bowl, this bowl is made out of porcelain. It's made out of some earthen material. And then somehow somebody put it together, put it round, and then shape it out and color it and put it in a kiln to burn, and then it finally get burned out. So there's so many causes, so many conditions. There must be a cause that the pottery makers say, I want to make a bowl. Then that is the main cause. But there are other causes too. We can chop that up as the main cause. Then he wanted to make a bowl, and there's so many conditions that he has the clay, he has all this equipment, he has all these tools to work on, and he finally make this bowl. And if we presume this bowl is the effect, so there must be a cause, and this is effect. And in between the cause and effect, there are so many conditions that make this cause come up to that effect. And what are these conditions? There must be a kiln to burn it, an oven, right? To burn it, and there must be color, must be clay, and then she has the money to buy clay, and she has the time to make it. There's so many conditions that make the first notion of making a bowl and finalize into an actual bowl made. There's cause and there's effect. And if you ask me, what is the first cause? The first cause has its first cause, So you can't trace the first cause, but we know there are causes. If you trace, John wants to make a bowl, and then if we treated John's notion of making a bowl as the first cause, then it's not right, because first of all, John has a body. Who gave John this body? If John does not have this body, John cannot make that bowl. So the condition, then this making of that bowl is only a condition and not the first cause. Then if you trace all these, there's no need to trace it, because it's difficult. It's extremely difficult to trace the first cause. And why do you want to trace the first cause? Why do you want to trace chicken comes first or egg comes first? You don't need to, because it's so much that only the wisdom of an enlightened one can tell you, you're not enlightened, but we know there are causes. So a cause has this effect. And in between, there's so many conditions to make it come true. So, in other words, the bowl, then we say, this bowl now is a bowl. Does it have its own existence, its own nature? When it says its own existence and its own nature, that means, can the bowl make it out itself? Can the bowl be independently exist? Can the bowl be controlling its own fate? Cannot. Because this bowl is made on conditions. We can see only the conglomeration of conditions, and we cannot see the real nature of the bowl. The bowl has no real nature. Because what's the definition of having a real nature? Having a real nature is its own creator. It does not depend on causes, and it exists permanently. That is having its own nature. Svabhava. In the Sanskrit language, it does not have its real nature, because by definition, Svabhava, Jixing, real nature, must have three characteristics. First, it's permanent. Second, it does not depend on causes and conditions to make it come true. Third, it can control its own fate. It cannot, because if I accidentally dropped it, it breaks. So this is existence based on conditions and not on its own nature. So its nature, as a matter of fact, is empty. And in the Sanskrit language, we call it sunyata. Causes come true, it exists. Causes disintegrate, it does not exist anymore. It is not permanent, it is only ephemeral, it's fleeting, it has no real nature of its own. So that's why we call it causality, and we call it emptiness. Emptiness does not mean it does not exist. This bowl, I call it is empty. Remember, form is no different from emptiness. Emptiness is no different than form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Apart from causes and conditions, this bowl does not exist. This bowl, apart from causes and conditions, I'm holding this bowl in my hand, but apart from causes and conditions, it does not exist. It exists only impermanently on causes. If I open up my fingers and let it drop, it does not exist anymore. It's shattered into pieces. It does not have its own nature. And nothing in the world has svabhava. Nothing in the world, nothing at all, has its real own nature. Not even a molecule. You name me something that is permanent. You name me something that does not depend on other causes to exist. Not even your own body. Every one of our body is sunyata, is empty. Why? Because you live on conditions come true. One day you die because all these elements, molecules disintegrate. You don't have a body anymore. And then finally your body disintegrates into ashes after a long while. You don't have this physical body anymore. And then you should ask another question, then where am I? Your consciousness left the body and shrink and venture into another body, carrying itself with the karma that you have made. I gave the example of our body as an inn, a hotel, an inn. Everybody is an inn, I-N-N. You live there on contract. And this contract is not renewable. Once the contract expires, you got to leave. You have to leave your inn sooner or later. You come in that inn, you check in, you got to check out. And who is checking in or who is checking out? Who? Well, ponder it over the weekend and maybe you'll give me an answer later. All right, that's it for today.